All right, welcome back to the course. This lecture will discuss the influences of implementing PSS design in a company and also in the value network where that focal company is in. Okay, and also I will partly discuss the transformation of the organization. In this particular course, I will give some more information about what a systemic change means in this context. Then, as I said, after this course, you should be able to describe what are the PSS influences on the organization, value chains, and their transformations. So, first, I would like to get back to the beginning of this course, meaning that I want to remind you about what this course has been, what this course has been meaning at a large context. I have been working on this topic more than 2 decades, and me telling the implications of PSS is obviously biased. So it's better to ask some sort of non-expert in PSS. And this is a quote I took from a business newspaper in 2017. The newspaper is issued in Japan and talking about the business sort of evolution over time. And the article discussed 2 different companies, 2 multinational giant companies. Both were doing rather well, financially speaking. It's Toshiba and Siemens. They were rather similar to each other in terms of business industrial sectors they were in. And at the time, 2017, one company was in a big financial trouble. The other was rather doing well. So the newspaper looked into what were the factors that made such a significant change between the 2 companies. What they say is Company S acquired other companies as partners who specialized in software and IoT businesses. And this article specifically pointed out the decreasing importance. So non-importance in selling off physical products and also scaling up the sales of physical products, increasing the number of products sold and taking a larger market share in terms of the number of products sold and thereby enhancing the scale of economy, etc., etc. So the point here is the what are the sort of rules of the competition have been changing. So the scale of economy caused by the number of products sold is not at least as important as it used to be. So here clearly you see the trend shifting towards product service provision from product sales businesses. So this is what we have been addressing, right, in this course. And this is the scale, this is the magnitude of the scale that PSS could impact on a manufacturing organization. And as I said multiple times from the beginning, the shift is not easy. It's challenging, it can be difficult, and that's why you have been learning how to support practitioners, business leaders realize that through adapting the way of doing design, addressing products and services upon systems, etc. All right? And as I said at the beginning of this lecture, a systemic change has been a key word for this course and in the topic of PSS. And I'm giving one example that we learned from a close collaboration with a manufacturing company of construction equipment. In the coming 3 slides, we performed lifecycle costing from the provider point of view. And we made a calculation of the monetary cost for providing a functional unit of providing a construction machine. We set up 3 different scenarios, and in each of the 3 scenarios, we calculated, in the case of product sales and also product service system, product as a service sale. Okay. So in total, we calculated 6. We made 6 calculations. Okay. So please compare scenario 1 in PaaS, product as a service, versus scenario 1 of product sales. Okay, so this is how you should look at this picture. So one clear observation is PaaS is more expensive for the provider compared with product sales equivalent. Okay? Quite significant difference. But first of all, in making that comparison, be aware that one of the large shares in the case of PaaS is maintenance cost. So maintenance cost in the case of PaaS is borne by the provider, and that maintenance cost is borne by the customer or product user in the case of product sales. Okay, in the case of product sales, construction machine is transferred to the user who owns the machine and who obviously needs to maintain the machine. So therefore, you need to be careful in understanding the meaning of this portion, maintenance cost. But still, even if you take the maintenance cost away, the PaaS cost is more expensive than the product sales. One more big portion is this part, PaaS management cost, right? And what this means the cost for the provider needs to spend for setting up product as a service contract and setting up the customer management framework and scheme and so on, which doesn't exist in the case of product seller. Okay? So the product seller, or in any manufacturing company, they have such a framework, and they use specifically commercial softwares to manage customer relations, etc., etc. So each manufacturing organization has such an overhead cost, but and that is included in the product sales business. But when such a manufacturing organization initiates PaaS business, then this PaaS management cost is newly added. So that is one thing you need to bear in mind. Okay, so now we searched if it's possible to change this comparison, meaning that we searched a space where PaaS offering is cheaper for the provider and also better for the customer in terms of economy, right? Omitting long and detailed discussion this slide shows one result, and all the details are described in this paper. So if you're interested in, read this paper, please. But this graph shows that by calibrating the maintenance cost on the horizontal axis and also past contract cycle lengths, then there is a space where actually there is a win-win for the provider and customer. And there is one important key factor that makes this space possible, that is changing the product durability. Okay? Obviously, if the product is more durable, then the maintenance cost is lower. Okay? So this is what we discussed as exchangeability between the effort for making products more durable versus increasing the maintenance cost and so on. No? So there, we looked into this exchangeability, and then we found that there is indeed factor, product durability, that makes this win-win space possible, right? So based on that analysis, we made this kind of metaphor representing the economics performance of the provider and also for the user. Typically, in the case of product as a service contract, if the price is higher, then the provider earns more. At the same time, the user will pay more, and the user will lose more money. Okay? So typically, so the balance is residing on the win space for the provider and lose space for the user. This is a typical situation. But as I explained earlier, there are different factors in between. So depending on the adaptation of these factors, including product durability and maintenance cost, etc., there can be a solution that makes this Libra stay in the win space for the provider and win space for the user at the same time. So this may be good to remember this sort of visualization. It's possible, but you need to find such a space. And often a systemic change is necessary. Okay? Is it clear so far? Okay, good. And if you look at industry broadly, a little bit outside, even outside product service system, you see such a good practice. For example, this is an electric vehicle. Electric vehicle tends to be more expensive than the internal combustion engine cars. And therefore, automobile manufacturers see a scenario of service-based offerings for the EVs. No? And also, the batteries play a key role in the for the EVs. And when the health of a battery decreases, then that could be taken out from an EV and could be used for a different purpose that requires lower performance. So with that kind of business models and also scenarios in mind, this kind of product design is quite common, which enables easy disassembly, easy taking away of the battery from the car and replacing, embedding a new one. No? So this is, I think, a good example that where a clear influence from a business model, service-based business models, for example, onto product design. Okay? Right. And how to realize such systemic changes in design has been the main topic of this course. And then I have used this PSS design schema multiple times, and this is one of the recommendations to industry. Okay, try to follow this and try to implement in this procedure in your company by perhaps adapting the current workflow. Huh? That has been a recommendation. But this lecture informs you it's not very easy, and thinking about the organizational situations and so on. So I explain that by looking into two papers both about product service systems, and one was published in 2010 in the International Academy for Production Engineering. This paper is very useful. If you are interested in, please take a look and read this paper. And this paper, these authors mentioned that after 10 years, result-oriented business models evolve as an industry standard. So this was a sort of the author's speculation based on scientific facts, etc. What may happen after 10 years of the publication of this paper, right? And 12 years later, colleagues of mine and myself together wrote a paper with the same topic in the same academic community, and we observed that such an involvement in manufacturing industry towards a result-oriented business model hasn't realized as it was envisioned or speculated. And why is that? I think this picture, this conceptualization, which I used earlier, gives some explanation, at least to some extent. So you see, just as a recap, this picture shows multi-layer sort of structure for design that happens in industry. What is central is evidence-based decision making. So this is the core of design, right? But right after that, the picture says that such a decision-making process must be translated in the given organization, must be implemented in that organization, and then the next layer regards personal thinking and reasoning and so on. So now focusing on the second layer, so any kind of design must be implemented in an organization. This is what I think is a big reason for why PSS design hasn't yet evolved so far to the extent that was speculated back in 2010. So what do I mean by organizational settings? I assume you have seen this picture, cartoon, or the like. This cartoon is quite old, 1992. It depicted the problems of designing physical products that are difficult to manufacture. So therefore, design for manufacturing was researched and practiced afterwards, and so on. Similar situations are happening when you look at product development department and also service development department in a manufacturing organization nowadays, I see this kind of phenomena in a number of manufacturing companies. And when a company wants to shift to product service system and its design, then it requires ultimately the commitment by a top management. The manager in service development, manager in the product development, they alone cannot make an effective change, because the change must come from above. Okay, so what we discussed in the previous lectures is largely about the integration between the product and service elements. Okay, so in order to make changes for that kind of activity, then sort of strategic change must come from above. Okay, so what happens as a sort of failure when that doesn't go well? I'm giving two examples that I know have happened in companies and industry. So let's say there is a quite complex product. By the way, the example I know is not exact this one, but just for you to imagine such a product, I am using this photo. So this is a product now we are discussing, and this product requires services, and the service department realized that in the product use phase, the sales staff of the same company had promised to their customers regarding the maintenance, repair, overhaul plan, which requires significant sort of activity in the service, which includes basically breaking the product, cutting the product, and using a crane and bringing up some parts of the product that will enable the services that were promised by the sales staff. So obviously, this case shows a sort of failure of a PSS design, and the failure comes from the fact that the requirements from the service were not effectively considered in the product design. Okay. Of course, as a consequence, time for the service is wasted, and money and customer value is lower in this case. No? The other case, so again, don't bother this photo so much. So let's say there is an industrial product. And at the beginning of the use phase of the product, the service of providing spare parts was realized, and therefore spare parts were provided to the customer's site, operation site. The problem in this case was the spare parts were too many compared with the spare parts that were required actually in the use phase. So basically, these spare parts remained unused at the product side. I mean, of course, this is waste. Huh? And this again shows an effective decision was not taken at the PSS design phase, so that the coordination between the product and services were not effective, or at least not ideal. Huh? So we sort of, after hearing this kind of cases continuously, we sort of made an abstraction of basically what's happening in industry. So we named this kind of phenomena as service design trap, which I think you will understand later in the coming slides soon. So let's say before the start of the product use phase, in such an organization, there is a product design department and also service design department. So two departments belong to the same organization, and obviously design must be executed for the product and before the production starts, right? Typically what happens in this phase in time is service design department has a number of questions, requirements, input to the product design department, but often they are not used effectively in the product design department. And sometimes even they are not heard. The people are not invited to relevant meetings, and so on and so on. And then once the design is finished, and once product design is finished and products are produced and then transferred to the user site, then people in the service design department realize that the services promised are not possible or very difficult at least to realize, and typically the product design is frozen after such a product launch to the market, right? So then the service design realizes we have a problem. Huh? So this is what we sort of conceptualized based on what we heard from industry. And we wondered, because the companies that have experienced this kind of problem are large multinational companies who have experienced product designers, market leaders in their segment, and experienced project managers, etc., etc. And still, we hear this kind of problems. And we believed that there must be some reasons for this kind of phenomena to happen. So this is our finding that explains why that phenomena happens. So now you will understand why this phenomena is called service design trap. The explanation comes from different characteristics of designing product versus service a long time. Okay, and there is software in between, but for the sake of simplicity, I omit this and to make the explanation more simple. One of the characteristics of service is inseparability between the production and use, right? So therefore, service is produced and used simultaneously, okay? And before that process, service must be designed, okay? And this is the starting point of the product use phase, right? And service design can be executed even after the, even in the use phase of the product, because one service can be produced and used at this point in time, and then right before that service can be designed, okay? In stark contrast, physical products are designed and then produced before they get used, right? This figure is quite simplified. There is more complexity in product design a long time. But to simply put, such a sequential procedure is a good description as a comparison with the service design. Okay? So remembering the picture that I showed in the previous slide, so what happens before the product use phase in two different rooms, and what happens after this, right? So the reason we think is in the early phase where both products and services can be designed, the decision making is not effectively taken. And we find that there are too many or too few decisions are taken in that critical phase, so that problems occur later. Okay? So in order to mitigate this risk, the collaboration between the product and service department is essential. And in that collaboration, what you learned from this course, such as different methods and frameworks, are useful. This is our recommendation. Okay? And to avoid such a problem, what typically is realized is this picture shows the product life cycle, design, production, use, etc. on the time. And typically, the company gets useful information, data and information in the use phase of the product, and that information could be transferred to the next generation of that product. So this is quite typical, and this is not bad, and this should be done, of course. But as I showed this to you and explained, there are opportunities from digitalization, different IoT technologies, different software packages, analytical tools, and so on. So there is a big opportunity for such a transfer of information and data in a more faster cycle. So that's why we visualized such anticipated lifecycle activities in this organic way. And the message is the company can and should react real time or near real time if possible, and if makes sense. No? All right. Any questions so far? Is it clear? Okay, good. Then this table gives summary of recommendations for a manufacturing company in doing this, taking this journey for product service systems. There are 4 recommended actions. Number 1, first, as a starting point, describe what is happening right now as a status quo in terms of collaboration, cooperation, and communication between different relevant departments of the organization, and make sure the data flows and information exchanges are documented. Yeah? Right? So how and expected outcome. Number 2, we recommend a specific function to be implemented in an organization who is responsible for taking care of at least overseeing different activities, and preferably has some power, authority to help the collaboration between different departments. With that, we expect better communication at least, and then we expect better design, better PSS design will be realized. Number 3, evaluate design process in the company. This is what we have been talking about with much time in this course. take an account of the current workflow for design and compare that with several recommended design methods, design procedures. Okay? And then typically there are gaps. And then the company can start think about how to fill the gap. Right? And number 4, we recommend company to get a systematic understanding of life cycle performance in terms of especially cost, which I talked in earlier in this lecture as well, and also life cycle value, what value is created, and so on. Okay, good. Then when it comes to the new function to be implemented, it's interesting to see a similar idea was proposed by other scholars in different contexts. The context was IT and information management for a company. And then those scholars recommend, let's say, unified data function right under the CEO of the organization. He or she should take care of everything related to data and the information across the company, so that the data flows and the information exchanges are facilitated and effectively performed throughout the organization. Getting inspired this proposal, we recommend a function for the better lifecycle management that relates to IT department, R&D, production service, at least. So this is what we meant by the new function, new role as a facilitator within the organization, right? Okay, any question regarding the last few slides? No? Okay, then, so now I would like to you to broaden the perspective even more from the organization itself to value network of the company, and also even governmental institutes who make regulations and laws and so on, right? So after this slide, you will see the result of our analysis from that point of view. But we started from the 5 essences of PSS design, as you learned earlier in this course. So I will go through these 5 items one by one. So this analysis rather focused on public policies in the context of circular economy. That is described on the right-hand side of the tables you will see. Please focus on the left-hand side of each table in the coming 5 slides. So that will explain the facilitators and barriers for each PSS design facet. So the first PSS design facet is functionality-oriented designing. Okay, so this is important to realize effective PSS design. What can facilitate that? So we see extending provider system responsibility, collaborative mechanism in the value chain, value network, and digital infrastructure. These are what we see as facilitators for the company to realize functionality-oriented designing. Okay, makes sense? But each of the facilitators meet a barrier. For example, when it comes to a company is thinking about extending their system responsibility, wider system responsibility, then they realize that there is a lack of such incentives for each organization to do that. Why does the company have to do that? Huh? And then in that kind of case, there may be some interventions to take that barrier away from the public policy point of view, right? But as I said, we can focus on the left-hand side of this paper. So the message to be taken from this slide is that each organization needs to recognize there are possible facilitators and there are barriers to push this PSS design thinking more and be prepared for the evolution of the company in terms of design. In terms of collaborative mechanisms in the value network, then always the companies, organizations encounter contractual issues, or at least they need to address contractual aspects. When it comes to digital infrastructure, again, we can expect the lack of incentives. Why each organization needs to provide given information, requested information, and so on. Okay? Second PSS design facet was actor identification and mobilization between the value network. So in this case, facilitator number one is, again, collaborative mechanism, and lack of incentive, trust, and dedicated collaborative mechanisms for the actors can be a barrier. Yeah? Also, in the similar way, digital infrastructure is a possible facilitator, but lack of such a dedicated infrastructure is not present. And in the European Union, in the last years, there's a big investment on the so-called digital product passport, DPP, which allows different actors along the product lifecycle to share part of the information data that they have. But it's under research and innovation, and we need to see what will be the outcomes of such investment. Hopefully, there will be an effective infrastructure that supports different organizations in terms of data and information. Okay? The third one is about value proposition. And we see here three facilitators. Number one, suitable market conditions. And because we see market condition is not always ideal for PSS. And barrier can be, of course, access is sometimes restricted in terms of used parts, used components, for example, that can't travel across different country borders and so on. Consumer acceptance would be great to facilitate PSS offerings more, but of course, not all customers are willing to move towards that, and some are reluctant to give away the ownership of the products. Just access is not enough for some customers, and so on. And regulatory challenges are also existent. Number four, design and integration of product elements, service element, and system elements. And here, facilitator number one, increased system responsibility given to the organization, and also adapted structure for the organization. Here, a barrier which is often told is the design practice of the organization is product-centric, and there are a lot of legacy aspects in that organization that prevent it from changing their ways of working and designing of their offerings. And sometimes unnecessary intermediaries in terms of unnecessary organizations may exist, and the lack of knowledge for doing such a product service system design. But that's why you are learning different lessons in this course, right? Collaborative mechanism and digital infrastructure is another facilitator even for this facet. Last facet, examining the balance between different elements and the integration of them. Facilitator number one, extended system responsibility, organizational structure, and digital infrastructure. I think I covered already this facilitator and its barrier already in another facet. And flexibility in risk management strategy is one facilitator. So recall the uncertainties become relevant in a different way than in the case of product sales. No? So therefore, the risk management and risk mitigation must be adapted in the context of PSS. No? And it's about uncertainty and risks. So summarizing the previous 5 slides, even when an organization implements the PSS design or product as a service design practice, there are factors coming from internal and external that prevent such design practice from getting exploited fully. So bear this kind of negative factors and think about how to mitigate this kind of risks. So that's the message. Any question for the previous several slides regarding facilitators and barriers? Okay, sounds good. Then in the last a few slides, I'll be talking about the transformation. There are different proposals in scientific literature regarding how a manufacturing organization could transform itself towards a PSS provider, and the digitalization plus servitization transformation is addressed, for example, in this picture. And typically, a message of that kind of recommendation is like split the shift into several pieces and take one piece one by one. No? So not trying to do all the elements at once, but take a step and implement piece by piece and gradually shifting towards the anticipated situation. So that's a common message. And when it comes to the evolution over time, this picture is often referred to, Oliver and Kallenberg, 2003. I think still this sort of evolvement over time is applied to many manufacturing organizations. So starting on the left-hand side, where the services are only add-on to their products, moving to the right, where their products and services are integrated, and possibly products are add-on to the services they see as a main part of the offering. And one such example of the companies that we work with indeed has this kind of internal vision. It's a bit old, a few years old, but they clearly see the importance of the shifts in terms of their offerings, the elements in their offerings on the horizontal axis, and they clearly say that mutual dependent between product and service organization under that company is necessary, and they aimed to realize a shift towards that kind of situation. Huh? Okay, any question regarding the transformation? Okay, any question about this lecture about systemic change and influence on the organization and value networks and also transformation? Any question?
Sorry, just a very basic question. Yesterday you gave us the insights about the LCA, and how do we decide which framework to put up on? Is it the LCA lifecycle, LCA or LLC, above which others?
So the question is, for example, this case I explained about is from lifecycle costing.
Yeah, yesterday you did the LCA example in your paper for that the wind turbine project.
Elevator.
And why didn't you choose LCC instead of?
Valid question. And regardless of the aspect that we chose in different scientific papers, think about manufacturing company. Yeah. They need to make sure the economic viability first of all. When they start with whatever business model, which is new. So the economic assessment is, I would say, a must for starting PSS. Without that, a company can't make a step forward. Huh? And in that, what I want to emphasize is that the result of the cost assessment will probably look like this, meaning that we want to start a new offering, PSS, and then we made a calculation, and this is more expensive for us. Probably this is the case, at least in many cases, because you can read up the how the cost calculation was done, and also what are the cost elements and so on in the paper. This happens in many cases. You will understand. So that means that this is probably the result they will see. And so the question is, if that organization gives up this new business offering, PSS, or dares to look into how they can overcome this cost difference. And then as I explained today, some cases at least, it's possible to find such a win-win situation. So, so cost assessment is a minimum, and environmental assessment is relevant in some cases, and environmental assessment, LCA, is useful for many other purposes in the organization, from the sustainability point of view and other risk management, risk mitigation regarding the suppliers, and so on. But that involves a little bit other aspects. So I would say cost assessment is a minimum, and start with that. So that's my message.
Thank you.
Then I would like to open the floor for more overall questions and even comments if you may have. You're free to ask a question for the entire course and also remarks and also even thoughts for your own future are welcome. Okay, then we can do that offline.
Maybe that you guys can prepare for valedictory session.